There is no hood like parenthood. Hi, I'm Kanika Chadda-Gupta. I'm a former CNN journalist, mom of 3, including twins, and host of That's Total Mom Sense, the podcast. Now, if I had $1 every time I heard, gee, you have your hands full. On my show, I interview change makers on their life lessons, legacy, and superpower of intuition, which I call our Mom Sense and Dad Sense. I've had the privilege of working with Mom 2.0, March of Dimes, and the White House, and have had some pretty amazing parents on my show.
Hey, what's up? I'm Kelly Rowland.
Hi, this is Chelsea Clinton.
It's me, Bobbi Brown. Can't wait to share my story.
That's Total Mom Sense is a production of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube so you never miss an episode. To join my tribe, visit that'stotalmomsense.com and follow me on Instagram at Kanika Chadda-Gupta. Now let's dive into today's episode. Hi, everyone. It's Kanika Chadda-Gupta, host of That's Total Mom Sense, the podcast. I wanted to open this very special episode by sharing that we recorded it back in 2023 with Julia Haart at her home in New York City. I got to know her for the brazen woman, mother, founder, and activist she is, who always leads with her heart. We spoke about her upbringing, life transitions, and family values. And as a special treat, I got a chance to interview her kids too. I hope you enjoy this heartwarming chat. You've seen her on My Unorthodox Life. You've seen her memoir, Brazen. And today I am so honored to be with Julia Haart in her immaculate home, having an intimate discussion where we meet as two women, two mothers who are aspiring to raise change makers of tomorrow and help other women along the way. So I'm so excited for our interview today.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. I think what you're doing is really wonderful.
Thank you. Your father, Michael, was an avid guitar player and musician and pianist. And your mother, Lena, she earned 2 PhDs in math and philosophy, won an award in the Soviet Union where she never got one question wrong on a test.
I mean, it's genuinely incomprehensible. She has a gold medal. It's not from Russia. It's from the USSR, like
Wow.
pre-Gorbachev, Brezhnev's time. And she has a gold medal because she never once made a mistake.
Wow.
Ever.
Wow.
Pretty impressive.
It's amazing. And so this dialogue we're having, I wanted to start it with music and go into a little bit of math and philosophy.
Okay.
And so this is our number theory driven dialogue.
I love it.
So our first number is 0.
Okay.
And you open your book with this. You felt like a 0. And when you had to join this whole new world, you just felt like you came from nothing. But now you're pursuing zeros of a very different kind.
Oh, I like this.
And you help so many people along the way do the same thing. So take us back to your childhood. You weren't a 0 in the beginning because you come from royalty, blue blood. Tell us about that.
Well, I definitely, it's not anything anyone in the outside world would consider royalty. It's the best way to explain it is the system in my old world is the same system that existed in the rest of the world a couple hundred years ago. The aristocracy, they were the head. And it was all based on lineage, who your father was, who your grandfather was. How could you get into the aristocracy? Well, come the Industrial Revolution, come America's wealth, you have all these wealthy heiresses flying to Europe to buy a title, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exact same thing. So the royalty and the nobility in my world are people who have a lot of big rabbis or, who have written, multitudes of books and have led yeshivas of men and so forth and so on. And the only way to get into that royalty, if you're not born that royalty, is to buy your way in. So you very often will find very wealthy people connecting with very rabbinic people because that's the only way to increase your lineage. It's exactly like it used to be in the 1800s.
Wow. And speaking of which, I wanted to share a bit of my story. So in the mid 1800s, I also come from kind of an aristocracy background. My father's grandfather, his name was Rai Bahadur Lala Mela Ram from Punjab and pre-partition. So it was where Pakistan is now in Lahore.
Wow.
Yeah, he had an amazing estate and they would celebrate Diwali and Eid, and there was no kind of religious divide at all. He built the first Punjab railways, and my
Wow.
uncle still has the blank check from the British Raj. He was given a blank check, whatever it cost, but because he was an industrialist who came from his own wealth, he didn't cash it. He said, "This railway is for
Everyone.
my country." So, yeah, it's
That's
amazing.
beautiful.
Yeah, and I think
Wow.
as you go
Yeah,
through
so
the
mine isn't
generations,
actual royalty, right? Let's make sure we get that
yeah, no,
straight.
but still, yeah,
It's
I mean,
religious royalty.
yes, yes. But and they were such respected, honorable people in the former USSR, your parents.
Yeah.
And so that brings me to number one. Your dad had $1 in his pocket. Tell us about the Jackson Amendment that actually brought him to America.
When I was very young, I was 3 years old at the time. So in the early 70s, there was this huge movement here in America called Let My People Go. You know, kind of a play on what happened in Egypt, right?
Yeah.
With the exodus of the Jews. Because at the time, there was extreme civil rights violations against Jews. Jews were just getting arrested for being Jews. And so very similarly to the embargoes and the economic sanctions we have against Russia now for what they're doing to Ukraine, America put on economic sanctions and embargoes on Russia for their anti-Semitism. And the bill that was passed was called the Jackson-Vanik bill. And the premise of it was Russia was in a deep hunger. They were starving and they did not have enough grain. And so America embargoed grain and then basically traded grain for people. So my family and I came out of Russia, traded for grain.
Wow. Wow.
That's how it came.
Yeah.
With a guitar and $1.
Right. And dreams, big dreams.
Always big dreams.
I love it. And moving on to number two. So oftentimes we think that marriage and being paired up kind of gives you a place in society. And, from my Indian culture, we definitely have customs of arranged marriage as, you have in the Orthodox community. So tell us about marriage and that number two.
It's interesting that you say that because when I left my community, all my friends, I would say maybe an exception of 1 or 2 people, were either Indian or Muslim.
Wow.
Because we all understood each other.
Totally.
I would tell my story like, that's happening
Exactly.
to us.
Yeah,
And then my Muslim friends would say, wait, but I had to go run away from the same thing.
Right.
And we connected on such an incredible level because, my first non-Jewish holiday that I ever celebrated was Diwali. I love it. I went to India my first year out of my community, and it was the greatest experience of my life. Like, I loved it so much.
Oh, I love
There's
that.
just such a connection because in the end, whenever you take a religion to an extreme, it's the same rules.
Yes.
It's the same rules. It's the same keeping women down. There's no difference.
But so tell us about marriage and, what that taught you, because you kind of charted the path that was laid out for you and then found yourself.
We were brought up on an 18th century world where women were trained to be wives and mothers, trained to be pleasing, trained to be silent, and where their intellect was considered less than men's, right? Go back less than 100 years even. Women weren't allowed in colleges and BBC, you weren't allowed to wear pants to work. In this country, you couldn't get a mortgage or buy a house without a man's signature. I mean, the world moved past that.
Right.
That world is still stuck in the 1800s.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the right to suffrage was only 100 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Look, the ERA still hasn't been ratified.
Mm-hmm.
They just repealed Roe versus Wade.
Right.
I'm afraid here is turning into there.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Well, there's just so many laws. And basically, the idea is that you cannot be the arbiter of your own destiny. You're not smart enough to be the arbiter of your own destiny. You need a rabbi to tell you what God would want from you. So that's basically how it works.
Yeah.
So then, if you believe that, if you believe that what's inside of you is not authentic to you and that someone knows you better than yourself and that's a rabbi, well, then you should never make a decision. It should all be decided for you.
Yeah.
Who are you to decide what's good for you?
Right.
Well, now we're going to regiment every aspect of your life. What shoe you put on first in the morning, what hand you wash first, when you're allowed to love, who you're allowed to love, how you're allowed to love, everything in your life. I mean, most of my friends, they won't buy a house or start a business without a rabbi's permission, even though that has nothing to do with religion.
Yeah.
But we were taught we don't have enough knowledge and understanding to think for ourselves, and we need someone else to do it for us. And I do not buy that anymore.
Yes. Yes. Coming to marriage though with Yosef, like he, I feel like was gracious in allowing you to be yourself and
Well-
didn't stand in the way, right? Or no?
I don't think he could stop me. That was the problem. The problem was that he wanted me to be like other wives. And
Right.
again, to be very clear, that's not his fault, right?
Yeah.
He was trained that this is what a good woman should be.
Right.
He was trained that this is what his role was. He was trained that his role was to command me. He was my master and commander, literally on a piece of paper. That's what it says, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm supposed to listen to my husband. It literally says in the Gemara something to the effect of that a man's voice and God's voice is pretty equivalent. Where does it say it? So there's this amazingly delectable thing in the Gemara. Basically, why a woman, I wrote about it in the book, right? Why a woman is not commanded to learn Torah or to go to synagogue on time.
Right.
Why? You ready for this? Because her husband is her master and commander. God is also her master and commander. So if her husband tells her he wants her to do X and Y, but she is following God and praying at the time or going to synagogue, she's going to anger her master and commander on earth. And therefore, God didn't want to create this difficulty for women as to decide which master to listen to. Therefore, he said, no, don't worry, you don't have to pray.
Right. Wow.
If that's not blowing your mind, I don't know what else.
Yes. Oh, there's so much of it. I mean, like even how a rabbi tried to explain that a woman's brain is lighter.
Yeah. It's
And-
It's not a rabbi trying to explain. It's what's says
written.
in the
Yeah.
Gemara.
Yeah. I know the rabbi that explained it said that, because women have the ability to multitask.
Which I
but it still,
loved.
yeah, but it still didn't explain as to why
That would prevent them from studying. And,
Right.
I mean, it was a beautiful explanation, but it didn't answer my question.
Yeah.
Because, okay, if you're saying Nashim Daitan Kalos means women's minds are capable of flitting from topic to topic, why would that prevent them from studying Gemara?
Right.
Why would that then be used to prevent them from, when I would quote books, I would get yelled at because I wasn't supposed to read them. Half of the library in my apartment, in my house, was verboten to me. It was forbidden. I couldn't read the laws that govern my life. So you cannot tell me that Nashim Daitan Kalos means multitasking when that's what's used to say women cannot study deep, complex subjects.
Right.
And that's just nonsense.
Absolutely. So moving on to number 3, when you were 3 years old, when you were living in Rome, and you've met the Pope, by the way, so
I
definitely
did.
regale us with that. There was a family friend who gave you your first Italian leather bag.
That's right.
And that was year 3. And I feel like that's when probably the penchant for fashion began.
You could not be more correct. People have asked me all the time, when did my love of fashion start? It starts from that handbag. So when I was 3 years old, as I said, we got traded for grain, but it wasn't a direct route to America. We lived for 6 months in like an internment camp in Austria. And for 6 months, we lived in the Vatican. And there was this little boy, he was 5 years old, Misha, and he would walk around and do little odd jobs for people and collect cash. And he took all that money that he had collected and he bought me my first ever handbag.
So sweet.
I carried that handbag with me until when I moved back from Atlanta to New York. Somewhere in the move, it got lost. I had that bag from the time I was 3 until the time I was 34. I was really sad when I lost it.
Yeah, I feel like that was your foray into fashion. It was like a foreshadowing of your career in
totally.
fashion. So tell us about the highlights of your career in fashion.
Well, when I left my community, I figured, hey, if I can time travel, I can create a fashion brand. And so as insane as it sounds, and it was insane. I didn't know anyone in the outside world. I didn't know about marketing or merchandising or logistics or how to make shoes or anything else. But I'd been drawing shoes my entire life, and I just thought I could do it.
Wow.
And within a year, we'd made our first million. And within 2 years, we were being sold in La Perla stores. We did a co-branding, and they had 127 points of sale. I don't know exactly how many the shoes went into, but many.
Wow.
From there, I became the creative director of La Perla and invented this cross-pollination between bras and clothing to create the first ever hybrid of clothes that were sold not just by dress size, but by cup size. We incorporated stretch into materials to make women look good and feel good instead of just looking good. I've always been about eradicating this idea that women should suffer for beauty. I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Men don't suffer for beauty. Why should we? I think we suffer enough.
Yeah. And they don't need to be doing the designing because they're not wearing
They're not wearing it.
Yeah, they're not
Thank
wearing the
you.
bras or the heels. So
Thank
then,
you. There you
yeah,
go.
doesn't make sense.
So I made the first ever stretch levers lace. We called it the Freedom Panty. And then I took over EWG, and I'm about to launch my shapewear brand, Plus Body. This is a painter of Saint Laurent pants.
Yes.
They're colored, they're dyed, and they're patterned.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when you stretch dyed material? What do you get?
Oh, yeah.
Those lines.
Yes.
Now, the reason shapewear is always so ugly is because the minute you dye it and you put it on and it stretches, it'll distort, right? The color distorts, the pattern distorts. This is shapewear. Does this look like any shapewear you've ever seen in your life?
No.
Now watch this. Stretch.
Wow. It's intact.
No change.
Yeah.
The pattern doesn't move. The color doesn't change. There's no stripes. It's a completely different process. It is not dyeing. And by the way, dyeing is really bad for the environment. It's one of the leading causes of wastewater.
Okay.
Our process does not use dyeing, does not create wastewater.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
Because it's really cool.
Yeah.
So
oh my
fashion
gosh.
has always been my thing. It's a mix. I love fashion and innovation. I like, even with the EWG brand, I took it from a traditional modeling agency into a media conglomerate. It was utilizing technology, avatars, metaverse. I was saying those words before Facebook became Meta, before everybody else was talking about it. I was doing it when it was so nascent that my investors and lawyer and bankers told me not to put it in the presentation because people would think I was crazy. Of course, the minute a guy comes out and says this is the future and Facebook turns to Meta, then they call me up literally the next day. Remember what you were talking about that you're doing with the avatars? Can you put that in the presentation? Like I told everybody.
The one from 10 years ago? That?
Nobody believed me, but then it worked.
So number 5 is some of the shows that you indulged in when you got your first TV.
First TV was when I gave birth to my son, Shlomo.
So yes, and you were nursing him.
Yeah, he and Batsheva are 2 years apart. Batsheva was born when I was 21, so I think I was like 23, 24.
Okay, yeah, and the shows that you watched, I mean, I loved growing up with them too, but hadn't seen that. They're on like TNT. But it's I Love Lucy, Get Smart, The Three Stooges, Leave It to Beaver, I Dream of Jeannie. Those are 5 of the shows that you watch. Tell us about that, like when you were like, okay, this is my little guilty pleasure, which was so innocent.
I know, it's ridiculous. One time I was watching Leave It to Beaver. You know, Yosef walks in on me and the couple is kissing. Not like a French tongue, blah, blah, blah. You know, this is like the most clean, pure television imaginable. And I went into this whole thing. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I promise you it's not dirty. It's a very clean show. Come watch it with me. I'm like, I'm in my mid-20s. I've just had my second child and I'm begging to watch Leave It to Beaver.
My God.
I mean, my God. The reason I watched those shows is in those shows, it had a very similar feeling to my community, meaning father knows best.
Yeah.
Mother's the homemaker. Mother's in the kitchen. Mother's taking care of people. Look at I Love Lucy.
Yeah.
Every time she tries to go out and work, she makes a disaster. She can't do anything. She can only be a housewife. Only Ricky can work, you know? If you look at all of those shows, they're very misogynistic. You think about all of them. It's always the man knows best and the woman's the messy one that he has to save over and over again. And you have to put up with her antics. You know, you've got I Dream of Jeannie or Bewitched. It's always the woman having to hide her talent or her capabilities so the man can be the boss.
Yeah.
If you think of all those shows, they're all massively I mean, I loved them.
Right.
But they were massively misogynistic. And so they fit perfectly in the world I come from, because that's how it is there.
Yeah.
Men know best. Women, you know, are sillier and they don't have the intellect of men and they can't make decisions like men do. So that it felt comfortable.
Yeah.
It was a world I could almost recognize.
Do you pinch yourself now that you have your own TV show?
Not really, because it's not about the TV show. I think I'll start pinching myself when I see my army of independent women forming. Like, that's the goal.
Yeah.
Until then, everything is a means to that goal.
Right.
Have I started on that goal? Yes. Have I come forward in that goal? Absolutely. Am I anywhere near completing it? No. I'm just getting started.
Yes. And we're here for it. Okay, that brings me to number 6. And the 6th is because at 42, 4 and 2 is when you started your new life, because you had given birth to all 4 of your kids by then and thought, no, rather than just kind of being complacent and staying in this, I'm going to kind of delve out into the unknown with my kids in tow.
You know, the problem there is it's not about being comfortable, right? In the sense that, was it familiar? Yes. But I wasn't going to make it. I would not have lived. I could not live anymore in this dichotomy between who I intrinsically am and who I was forced to be. It was tearing me apart. When I left, I was not well. I really wasn't. I felt so much anger. It almost ate me alive. Almost ate me alive. The only thing that kept me going, the only thing that transformed it to joy was work. It was the first time I was allowed to accomplish and achieve and create and show the world a little bit of what I'm capable of. It gave me so much inner peace that it made everything else worth it.
Wow.
And the fact that my children came with me, I mean, I wasn't leaving without them. So it wasn't I'll leave even if they don't come. That wasn't going to happen, right? I knew I couldn't take on because he was too young, but he wouldn't have had a mother if I hadn't left when I did. I couldn't take it anymore.
Tell us about your kids, because we're going to hear from them too. How would you describe what you admire most about each of them?
Oh, good question. Oh, goody. Okay. Start with Batsheva. It was just her birthday yesterday.
Yeah.
Batsheva was literally born a caregiver and a responsible person. She is the most dedicated, hardworking, ambitious caregiver. She cares about other people. She takes care of everyone. She's a mommy. You know, she has that internal eldest daughter thing where she just takes care of everyone.
Right.
And she has what I admire. I mean, I admire a lot of things about Batsheva, but what I admire most about Batsheva is her ability to be inwardly focused and not allow other people's impressions of her to matter. She is so self-sufficient and self-reliant. And I'm not talking about just financially, which I'm very proud of, but she's that internally and emotionally. Like when she had a friend who was a bit of a negative person, and I saw Batsheva and I was like, oh, I see, you know, this woman keeps bringing you down. She said, yeah, I've told her I can't be friends with her anymore because her negativity is
Like toxic.
It's toxic.
Yeah.
That's what she will do.
Wow.
Like she's not afraid.
Right.
She's not afraid to be emotionally honest and to recognize that her needs matter. And I'm not good at that.
Yeah, same.
I am not good at that.
There's like boundaries that she
there's
creates.
like, oh, I can forgive this. Oh, I can forgive that. Oh, this is an excuse. So that I let people get away with a lot of nonsense.
Yeah.
Not anymore. I'm working.
Yeah. No, it's
I'm
great.
learning from her. If this experience has taught me anything, it's that men don't know better.
Yeah.
And I should stop trusting every one of them just because they're a guy.
Yeah.
That's what amazes me about Batsheva. Shlomo, I don't think I've ever met a kinder human being. I don't think he's ever said anything unkind to a single human being in his life. Oh. He is just the most genuinely good human being I've ever met. And he's, again, incredibly hardworking. This is a kid who couldn't write a sentence in English grammatically correctly. Couldn't do it. You should see the first writings when we tried to get him into college. I mean, it was like English wasn't even his second language. It was like his 15th. It was bad.
Okay.
And he just graduated Columbia. Wow. I mean, think about that. The amount of work it took for a kid who comes out of school not being able to write a grammatical sentence to being able to graduate from Columbia University.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's incredibly intellectual. He's my philosopher. He's my philosopher. He's my politician. He's very into ideas and concepts and thoughts. He's a very thoughtful person.
Yeah. Diplomat.
And yeah, it's pretty cool. And he's the COO of my shapewear brand.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. And Miriam, there's an anecdote that was shared on the show. She is just a dynamo when it comes to all things tech.
Yep.
And as an example, when she was trying to take a college course, she wasn't old enough at 16. Did you ask the professor, like, if she can hack into the system and register herself?
She asked him.
Okay, yeah.
She told me the story.
Oh my God, amazing. She was like, if I can hack into the system, then I want to be signed up for this course. And she did it. She signed herself up for a course. And of course the professor is going to be dumbfounded and be like, fucking teach the class now. Amazing.
She's the youngest person in Stanford history to ever give a class. She gave a class on augmented reality as a freshman. And they liked her class so much that they kept it in the school curriculum, even though she's no longer teaching it.
Wow.
How crazy is that?
Wow.
When I was, can I just brag for like
30 seconds?
Yes,
Please do.
Okay,
oh my gosh.
Proud mom over here. I can't help it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's the best.
When I went to her graduation, I met the president and he told me that when she used to be giving her class, when she was a freshman, he would bring in investors who were looking to donate to the school into her class and introduce her as the future president.
Oh my God. That's happening. That's definitely happening. We're manifesting that right now. Yes. Yes. Oh, it will. I mean, they'll run after her.
She's so,
Please
can you imagine if we can have a female Jewish bisexual president? That would be effing cool.
Yes.
That's all I have to say.
Oh, and she deserves it.
Yes, she does.
And Aaron.
Aaron is, I think he's crazy brilliant, like unbelievably brilliant. And he is so well-spoken, so confident, so good in his own skin. He is incredibly articulate. It's funny, he and Miriam remind me so much of each other. They're extreme in both, like, meaning she is a big techie, he's all into Torah, but they have a very similar personality. And then Shlomo is my intellectual, my philosopher, my detail-oriented thinker. He's someone who can really run things because he can see multiple facts and put them together. Aaron is my firebrand.
And has the fame affected them? Because coming from a community that was so close-knit and isolated, and now we all see you on TV, like all over the world.
Well, I think, of course, it's definitely affected all of us. I think the kids, it's been a very positive effect because, people aren't going to yell at them. They yell at me, right? I get all the hate.
Oh,
so it's okay. It's okay. I can handle it. But they get more, thankfully. Thank God. I'm very grateful for that. I do not want my kids messed with. So no one mess with my children, please. But so for them, it's been a more fun experience. They get recognized. People stop and talk to them. They get to, but Miriam and Batsheva both have podcasts. They get to share their thoughts with the world, and they both really want to make a difference. So I think there's been a lot of positive for them. I think, our own is kind of a mixed bag. On one hand, he gets to see the rest of the world. On the other hand, the community really went after him to hold him because of the show, because he's their voice to the world. So
conflicting.
It's conflicting. I think it was a good experience for him, but I don't think it was a super easy one. Like my original idea was not to include him. He's the one who wanted to go on.
Oh, great.
Originally when we made the deal, he was not on because I just thought he was too young.
Right.
But he really was like, wait, you don't even ask me? I was like, I'm so sorry.
Awesome.
I just didn't think you'd want to do it. But he's like, yeah, I want to do it. I was like, okay.
Wow. Amazing. Have people from the community reached out to you, women that want to break out?
Tens of thousands.
Oh my God.
You should see the list.
You're their beacon.
You should see
help
the
us
list.
Get out of here.
And I'll tell you something. I'm not going to mention the name or where I met this person because I don't want to get this person in trouble.
Sure.
I met this very big rabbi, big rabbi, one of the most famous people in my world. And I was at this event and he comes towards me with his entourage. They travel in a group, right? And I'm like, oh no, here we go. I'm going to get yelled at and called an anti-Semite and all this nonsense. And he walks over to me and he looks down and he says, Ms. Haart, my wife's and my daughters, thank you. And walked away. Wow. I almost
That's huge.
fainted.
Yeah.
It is the last thing I expected that man to say. Yeah. But there you go. He's a religious man with all the religious garbs. He's a very, very famous religious man. But his wife and his daughters don't have a good life. And he sees that and he wants more for that.
Oh, wow.
And that's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I always say there are no villains in my story.
Right.
There are only victims. Every person there is there because they think it's what God wants. They're not trying to harm women.
Yeah.
They're not trying to hurt anyone. This is what they've been taught. And until we change those rules and laws, women are going to suffer.
Yes.
Not because men want to keep them down, but because they're trained to keep them down.
Exactly.
There's a big difference. So this has been my philosophy from day one. And thank God, I think my children really prove it. Being spoiled isn't how much you have. Being spoiled is if you think it's coming to you. And that's the problem.
Right.
Problem is, when you think the world owes you something, if daddy doesn't buy you a Mercedes, daddy's is evil, right? Because daddy owes you a Mercedes for some reason.
Right.
That's spoiled.
Yes.
I'll tell you something. Every single one of my kids' birthdays, I would say for at least the last 9 years, probably more. When I always go over, because I think presents should be what the person wants, not what you want, right?
Yeah.
I always like to ask.
Yes.
And not
Makes
make
sense.
assumptions.
Right.
Every year, when I ask my kids what they want for their birthday, they always, all four of them separately, tell me the same thing. You give us so much, we don't need anything.
Oh.
So it isn't about what you have. It's about what you think you
Already?
owe.
Yes.
That's spoiled. And I think with how hard we've had to fight, and look, continuing to fight, all the accusations against me that finally got dismissed and thrown out without, ever being able to be brought again, all of that stuff, that takes a toll.
Yeah.
They've had to fight for their freedom. And I think that's the other answer, is that we don't take anything for granted. I'm grateful every day as they are, because look at where our hard work and faith in God has brought us.
Yes. Wow. I want to shift gears and talk about your activism and work in Ukraine.
Sure.
You have, put your own life in danger's way to be on the front lines, to truly give back and aid these families who just have no recourse at all. They're stuck in a war zone. Tell us what made you even think to go there.
Everyone thinks I'm crazy.
I mean, you're magnanimous.
They're like, why are you going into a war zone? Can't you just donate money, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have a choice, or I didn't feel I had a choice, because my whole life has been about fighting for freedom, right? For myself, for my children, and then extrapolating that and trying to create this army of financially independent free women who don't have to ask permission, right? I've given up family, my friends, my siblings, any relationship with my parents. I've given up everyone and everything I've known. I've left everything behind for freedom. Ukrainians, they're not just giving up people they know or everything they know. They're giving up their lives.
Yeah.
They're dying for freedom.
Right.
I mean, they take what I've done and multiply it by 10 bajillion.
Mm-hmm.
They're putting their lives on the line for freedom. To me, they're one of this century's greatest example of freedom fighters. Guess what percentage of the Ukrainian army is actual army, like trained as soldiers? 4%.
Wow.
96% of the Ukrainian forces are volunteers.
Wow. But tell us about what it was like being in the bunkers with them, and you're hearing shells and the missiles and the, buildings blowing up. It's
oh my God,
oh my
it was
goodness.
so nuts. So we were in this one place. I'm going to be very vague because I don't want to.
Yeah, of course.
We don't want to give Russians any information.
No.
We were in this one place where there was like a commander's outpost, and the camaraderie and the joie de vivre there, you would never think that we were in a war zone.
Oh
like we go down there and they're like, Julia Haart, we love your show. And I'm like, war zone, this is amazing. Like there was, they were laughing and kibitzing and taking photos and be like, post about us. It was so cute.
Oh, that's adorable.
And literally bombs floating over their head. And their kind of whole thing is like,
yeah,
we're going to win. It's our freedom. We're going to fight to the death. They're so sure of victory because they'll never give up.
Mm-hmm.
It's victory or death. It's freedom or death.
Yes.
And what is more impressive than that? So I had to go and I had to physically be there. I had to shake their hands and tell them they're not alone and bring my audience with them, because we can bring them exposure. In addition to the medical supplies and the ambulances and the oxygen masks and the IFAX kits, you know, the individual first aid kits and insulin shots and all the stuff we brought them, it's been really tough going through last year, getting accused of all these things, watching a man destroy my reputation, having judges not believe me. I mean, it's been tough.
Yeah.
Looking at them, I think to myself, okay, I've suffered reputationally for my, you know, my search for freedom. They again are giving up their lives. And that meeting them, spending time with them, being there, I think it's made me a stronger person. I'm going back.
Yes.
I'm going back in April
Oh my
with
gosh.
22 ambulances instead of just 3.
Wow.
And
Wow.
way more medical supplies because I think it worked. That exposure brought more attention. And now, obviously, not just that, everything that's going on in the world. I'm not trying to take any credit for it. Seeing me going there, seeing what was on the ground, I think it definitely inspired some people. And now we've had 22 ambulances donated,
Yeah.
which is really cool.
Wow. How can we join you and support you in your mission?
There's links in my stories to different organizations. If anyone has the wherewithal, please fund. If not, if you don't have money but you want to help Ukraine, there's a really cool way of doing it. In mid-April, I don't know exactly when, it's not up to me. They're going to give me the dates. We're going to take these 22 ambulances and we're going to drive through a bunch of cities in America. And what we want people to do is write words of support and solidarity on the ambulances. So as we're driving through all Ukraine to get to the front lines, people are reading messages of solidarity from America.
Wow.
So if you don't have the financing, the funds to help Ukraine, come see us in one of the cities we join. I'll put it on my social media when I know which cities they are. It's not up to me. And come write a message because you have no idea. Like, I'll tell you, through the most difficult part of last year, one of the things my family kept me going, the other thing that kept me going is solidarity from strangers.
Yeah.
People reaching out to me online saying, we believe you. We believe in you. The guy is lying. And it kept me alive. It kept me sane. You have no idea the power of feeling supported and connected to a greater whole. And that's what I want Ukrainians to feel. We're here for them. We believe in them.
Yeah.
We think their struggle is the struggle. And yeah, I think that's really important. I cannot fathom how excited I am to go back. I really am excited to go back. And then, of course, you know, my other big thing is women's rights and what's going on with Roe versus Wade. It's the first time in my life I've ever been political. I've never been a Democrat or Republican. To me, I was like, it's all crazy.
Yeah.
They're all nuts. Forget it. Bye.
Yeah.
But then I realized I can't ignore politics.
Yeah.
If I ignore politics, this is what happens. If I really want freedom from women, I cannot ignore politics. And to me, it isn't about Democrat or Republican. It's who's taking away women's rights.
Yes.
And right now, I don't see a choice. I think the states that are taking away women's right to have an abortion are predominantly Republican. The states that are enforcing those rights are predominantly Democrat. So I don't see that women have a choice at this point. Yeah. Whether you're a Republican or Democrat, it doesn't matter. This is your freedom. This is your body.
Yeah.
I've lived in a world when that is not your own to decide. It sucks.
Yeah.
I don't want that here. And I'm going to do everything in my power, which is why I've tried to support Kathy Hochul, the first female governor of New York. I think she's extraordinary. I'm completely in awe of her. I've gotten to meet people like Tish James, who I think should one day be president, please God. That would be so amazing. I got very involved. I did, events here. I fundraised. I went to fundraisers. I spoke to Bill Clinton. I spoke to President Biden. I've met with all sorts of officials. I've gotten arrested for civil disobedience when I did a march in Washington and I sat in front of the Supreme Court and refused to move and
Good
got
for
arrested.
you.
The hardest part was literally sitting on the grass waiting for 5 hours or whatever it was to get processed. We never actually got put into a police station. They sat us on the grass and like, you're arrested.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Yeah.
They were actually very lovely to us. The police were so nice. They handed out water bottles. They were like, at least 10 of them came over to us and were like,
can you take a picture?
No, not that. But yes, a few did that. But most of them wasn't about me at all or about the other actresses that were there. Not that I'm an actress. I know. me as a
Celebrity
reality
figure.
person,
Yeah.
whatever, and actresses. And literally so many of them came over and said, you know what, if it wasn't for these uniforms, we'd be sitting next to you.
Oh,
A
wow.
lot of the people there, the policemen were like,
We're with
we're
you.
with you. We know we can't leave you here, but we would like to. They handed out towels because the ground was so hot, and I was so impressed.
My
There was this
goodness.
real spirit of camaraderie. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of problems, don't get me wrong, but you got to say the good with the bad, because hatred is just not a healthy thing.
No, not at all.
Not anywhere. You got to make it better, not hate it, you know?
Yes.
We did this paint to power thing where I'm not the first woman to not be believed in court by a long shot.
Mm-hmm.
My lawyers were telling me that there was a story that this woman put in a video of her husband beating her with an umbrella and still didn't get a restraining order. I brought 800 documents, and I'm the one that was being called a liar. It's so incomprehensible. But he's great.
Mm-hmm.
He's a great storyteller, and he's elegant, and people just like him and believed him. I believed him for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about making sure that what you're doing is what is integral and true to your nature.
Yeah.
And Paint to Power was an experience of women like me who have been denigrated, who have been called liars, who have not been believed when a man disagrees with them, who have done everything right and still been treated badly.
Mm-hmm.
And that engenders so much anger and pain.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hurtful to know that I am always told the truth and have not been believed. It's one of the worst feelings in the world. And then I don't understand it, because I look at all these documents that say 50-50, 50-50, 50-50. I see accolades galore. I see the valuation that went to $1 billion. And I think to myself, how is it possible that anyone believes any of this?
Right.
It doesn't even make any logical sense. And yet, lo and behold.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was very painful. And I realized that it isn't about me or my pain. Who gives a shit about me and my pain? It's about the collective pain of women.
Mm.
And so that's what Paint to Power was. It was pain
yes.
with a, like a feminine T,
Mm-hmm.
to power, meaning our collective pain, if we share it and we support each other, that becomes our power.
Right.
If women unite together and do not let the white male pull them apart by saying, oh, well, you're Black and you're Jewish and you're this and you're that, and they try to separate us so that they can keep us down. But when we came together, and that's what happened in Paint to Power, every imaginable ethnicity. We had Iranian women performing about what's going on in Iran. We had every ethnicity. We had this incredible ceremony done by this woman, blown away, so moving. I mean, people were bawling. So it didn't matter, you were Black or Hispanic or white or Jewish or Christian or Muslim, whatever nationality, it didn't matter if you were transgender, anything. Latina, whatever, Latinx, whatever it was, our pain brought together creates power. Yes. And everyone walked out of there, tears streaming down their face, feeling so empowered and so connected to womanhood around the world.
Yeah. Wow. So if there's one anecdote you can share where you're like, I just went with my mom sense on that, and I'm so glad I did.
I'll be honest. My mom sense was real simple for me.
Mm.
Every time I wasn't sure what to do as a parent, I would literally think, okay, what would my mother do? And do the diametric opposite.
Okay.
And it worked perfectly.
There you go. There you go.
It.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. And a mantra that you live by.
Get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
That's great. That's great.
it. I've been uncomfortable for 9 years, and I'm starting to get used to it.
I love it, Julia.
Thank you
are
so
a
much.
joy. Oh my gosh.
Oh, this is wonderful.
This was so great.
You are fantastic.
you.
Your questions were so thoughtful. I love the way that you organized it. Really
Thank
cool.
you.
Shlomo, welcome to That Subtle Mom Sense.
Thank you for having me.
I akin your life to Harry Potter. So you're like a real life Harry Potter, where you often have to straddle between two worlds, and similar to wizards and Hogwarts versus muggles. You grew up in Muncie, but now you're in, modern day Manhattan. So what is that like, that dichotomy like for you in life?
It took me a while to find my right balance. When I first moved to the city, still pretty religious, started going to Columbia University. So finding the right group at Columbia was difficult, or even my neighborhood. But so I moved to the Upper West Side, I didn't dorm. I wanted, a kosher kitchen, Shabbos and all these things. So yeah, even like, so now that's like 2018, now we're 2023. I still live in the same building, same neighborhood. I'm not religious today, but I still get to enjoy a lot of I host Shabbat meals all the time. I enjoy my neighborhood so I get basically, let's say this better, I get the good parts that I like, and I also get to enjoy like the outside world. Like when I come downtown to the West Village and I could go out,
Right.
It wasn't a quick or easy move. I left yeshiva in 2016, and I would say I became not religious about a year and a half ago, like fully not religious. And so over those like 5 years, it was just constantly trying to figure myself out, what I wanted, what I didn't want, what I believed in. And yeah, and along the way, the whole family was always supportive. And
That's wonderful. What memories do you have from your childhood that you could regale us with?
I was definitely not the biggest social kid growing up. I was more like a little different. So I wasn't the biggest fan of camp.
Okay.
So my mom would, do activities with me. Throughout the year, if I was enjoying school, she'll take me out now and then and do stuff. So that was really nice of her. I think also one of the reasons, I know about Chava and her, you probably read this in the book, they had their little fallout for a bit. And one of the reasons that I never had that with my mom was because I think we had that connection, we understood when someone was going through something.
Yeah, wow. And she said that about you because I was curious to hear her take on what she admired about each of you. And she just admires that you have that quality, which is the glue for all your siblings.
I don't know if I want to say I'm the glue. We're all very close.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, they would be able to do that without me. We definitely get along. I am, I guess, diplomatic. I try to always keep peace and understand the other person's opinion. But I think I've learned that also, I think because of the way I was brought up, be able to see one side of the world and how they live and then going to this side. I don't necessarily agree with the way they live today, but I do see a lot of good within it. And, that's their choice. And, I'm choosing this way.
What was it like growing up in a home with 3 other siblings, having a full house?
So it's funny that you say that because, growing up, we were the smaller household.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of people want to have 8 kids or something like that.
Right.
So having 3 siblings, a small family.
Small
I was always really close with Batsheva, mostly with Miriam. We had a little breaks here and there just because schooling. But and then Aaron. Also I lived in Israel for 2 years. So I lost a little touch. But I think from our culture and just the way we were raised, family's the first thing.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, what anyone does, you're your family, and that's what's important.
Absolutely. Your mom just kind of being this beacon for other women or just communities who are oppressed. You must be just immensely proud of her.
Yeah, always doing good work, speaking up for what she believes in and trying to always help people in need or in bad situations and, putting herself out there, she got a lot of hate for what she stood up for, and
yeah,
I think she would do it every time, even knowing what would happen.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting how, she has this memoir and you get to go live your mom's life when she was a kid. When she was in Austin or with her dog Veronica or, that very pivotal moment when her great uncle said, let's move to Muncie. How was that kind of being wow, that's when Ema was 5, 10, 13.
For my grandparents' past, I learned more from the book, but from her past, I already knew a lot about this.
Yeah, but that's great because a lot of times parents don't talk about it. I growing up in an Indian household, I don't know what it is, but as much as it's important to have open lines of communication, everybody we were just stoic. I just didn't know about it until I would ask around and ask uncles and aunts, what were they like? Yeah, I always think it's that's fascinating that you hear it from your parents' own words.
Yeah. Your roots aren't what defines the future, but it's important to know where you came from. So.
Absolutely. when and if and whatever, if you choose to get married and be a dad someday, what are some of the life lessons that you learned as a kid that you're like, oh, I would definitely want to teach my kids this?
I think the same thing, like for me, you know, family first. You're not living to work, you're working to live. And I think your most important thing in life is always the people who are around you every day. And I would want that for myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And with your mom taking a stand and being this activist, the fact that she's gone to Ukraine, she's going back, does that scare you?
I'm very anti. I mean, I'm very pro, like, Ukraine, helping Ukraine. I think there are a lot of ways you could do that.
Yeah.
I don't believe that she should be going to Ukraine.
I'm scared shitless for her. Yeah.
But, you know, she's doing what she believes in, so I could respect her decision to do it and strongly disagree at the same time.
Right, yeah, exactly. Spoken like a true diplomat that you are, Selma. I love that. And I think it's important to like allow someone to, you know, feel the fervor for what they want to do and not be like, okay, no, that you can't do this, because it's something that she feels like there's an onus on her to do this.
Yeah.
And we're all thankful and in awe for it. What are some of the life lessons that she taught you?
Never give up. Always keep working for what you believe in. I mean, family again.
Mm-hmm.
Always look for the truth, but always be open to also not knowing. Like, you don't have to have an opinion. You could learn and then make an opinion.
Yes. Oh, that's brilliant. And now you're actually working with her. So you are her COO for her shapewear line. What's that like? Because that's a whole other dynamic. Not only are you her son and like her friend, but now you're like business partners and like gotta see eye to eye.
I mean, well, she's still the CEO, like, CEO, so partners, but
in the C-suite together.
C-suite, yeah. No, it's interesting. It's definitely a new dynamic relationship-wise, but I think we handle it really well. I'm looking forward to how I could help bring the company forward and grow it, and I think I've given her the confidence in my abilities, and looking forward to see what we do together.
That's so exciting. Any last thoughts or advice that you have for?
I mean, you have parents, right?
Yeah.
I mean, probably don't you interact with them in like a loving, caring way?
Yeah.
So, you know, at the end of the day, we all grow up. We all get to that point where, you know, we know what our parents did for us, and then, you know, we're appreciative and we love them for what they did, and even though yes, they're not caring to us anymore, we're gonna love them because they're our parents.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
I am now with Batsheva, and I'm so excited to hear her take on what it's been like growing up and having the strong mother that she has. Batsheva, welcome to That's Total Mom Sense.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. And I love the podcast name. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I feel we all have one. It's our intuition. So dad sense, grandma sense, whatever you want to call it. So tell us a little bit about your fondest memories growing up.
Every Sunday, we would always do like family activities. It's like Sunday Fun Day wasn't coined as a term at that time, but it definitely was. Like we went bike riding, or we went to, like, when I remember growing up, we would do like a Renaissance fair, just like whatever was going on. It was never just like a lazy Sunday. It was like my mom's like, let's do something fun. And I definitely appreciate that. And I'm like that today. Like, I always like to do activities and like find out what's going on. And one of my other really fun memories that's more like specific to my mom is she would let me like play hooky when I was in high school, and we would go to the city and we would have lunch together and go shopping. Like, my mom was very let us do our own thing. So she knew that like I loved fashion and she loved fashion. And it was just like one of those really fun days where like my friends are like, your mom is like letting you stay home from school. And I'm like, yeah, like, does your mom not do that?
Right. Oh, I love that.
That was something that like I always really loved. And we actually went to culinary school together when I graduated high school. I didn't want to do a gap year in Israel, which was like all of my friends were doing. And I ended up going to culinary school with my mom, a kosher one in Brooklyn. So it was quite the experience, but it was like something special that I'll always remember.
Oh my gosh, that's wonderful. And we love seeing the lives that you do. And then the reels that you put out on cooking. It's great that you guys share
Yes.
that.
Yeah, that was definitely when I was growing up. My mom loved to cook. So I was never allowed to be in the kitchen, but I could bake. And
Hmm.
so I started doing like baking and stuff. And then when I was old enough, my mom's like, okay, fine, like you can get involved in the kitchen. So that was definitely something that we bonded over, our love of food.
That's wonderful. And I mean, she told me, and of course, seeing the show, and just I feel like I know so much about who you are and your aura. You have a motherly instinct, and you took care of your siblings, and that's something that's so ingrained in you, and you rose to the challenge. So, what was that like? Because I feel like even though you were a kid, you were a very responsible adult child.
I feel like as an oldest, like you're naturally like a take care kind of personality. And when my mom, like, left the community and started her journey, like I was my little brother's nanny. And it was like a
Mm-hmm.
win-win because like my mom hired me and that was like my side hustle job. And I got to hang out with my siblings and make dinner and do homework and create this really special bond with my little brother that most people who are like 13 years apart like never really get to like spend that quality time, I feel like, with their siblings. My friends always say that I'm like the mom of the group and like taking care and like making sure everyone's doing all right. And I definitely got that from my mom.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
What are some of the lessons that you've taught her that she's like, wow, I never thought about it this way, but Batsheva brings this out in me?
I think my mom always says that I don't care about what other people think. And I do my like beat to my own drum, do my own thing. And she definitely raised me that way. Like I credit my parents so much to raising me like really independently, and to think for myself. I do feel like my mom has always been like a people pleaser and she wants to make sure everyone's happy and doing well. And I'm much more like, I'm a little more black and white than my mom is.
Hmm.
And she always says, like sometimes you need to learn when to say no. And I'm like very good at like my boundaries. And that's something that she always is like, I wish I was better at that. So I'm giving her
Yeah.
some feedback, and then as well getting the feedback from her on when maybe I can be a little bit more welcoming in that sense.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And one thing that I feel, is so palpable with the two of you is you're like a mirror to each other, and you're there for each other, sometimes in parallel circumstances. And so when you both had to deal with the divorces, you were there for each other. How did both of you just, crawl out of that?
I think my experience was really different than my mom's. Like I thankfully had like a really amicable divorce. Like my ex was part of my family for 10 years. So just like to
Yeah.
have that support for my family and they're like, we love you, we want you to be happy. And there was no like bad mouthing or, shitting on my ex, which I know like could go in either direction sometimes, unfortunately. And my family was just like, we want you to be happy, whatever we can do to support you and be there for you. And in my mom's case, she just like is still going through it. And I think definitely in the beginning, like I'm able to be there for her more now than I was initially. I'm like, if you saw the show, it's just like I was
Yeah.
still coming through my phase where I wasn't okay yet. And to be a support system for someone when you're not mentally okay, I think is really challenging. So I think I was trying to be there in the distraction kind of way.
Hmm.
And now I'm able to be there for her more in like a emotional supportive kind of way because I'm doing okay.
That's wonderful. I mean, to have her by your side and her you is so significant. And then both of you can be really clear about who you are, what your values are, and what you're seeking.
My parents didn't get divorced until I was like much later, but they got
Yeah.
separated when my mom left. And to like do all of that on her own without like a support system of her family, like I can't even imagine. So it definitely was like I had a greater appreciation for what she did for my family in terms of finding her own path once I went through my own divorce because I was like, wow, like this is hard. And like to do
Yeah.
this without a support system is really tough. So I admired that she was able to do that.
I mean, even through her book and how she shared her personal experiences, I still can't believe it's like, is this a real life woman?
Yeah.
Did she come out of this oppression and have this, chutzpah in her to say, this is not how life needs to be. There doesn't need to be these restrictions, and there's a better way, and there's a better way that I gotta create for my kids and this next generation. Like, it's just, it's so admirable and mind-blowing. And I mean, you're on the other side now. Like, how does that feel now that you feel like you've seen two worlds and you're really taking the best from both?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so grateful. I wouldn't change my upbringing because I have such an appreciation and an understanding that everybody has their own path and their own form of happiness, and no way is the right way. I just think it's amazing to have the opportunity to be able to choose what I want instead of feeling like something's forced on me.
Exactly. Now, post, the show, you're recognized wherever you go. How has that changed your perspective when meeting people?
I think that people are generally really kind and nice when they come say hi. So it's always nice to meet people who feel connected to the show.
Yeah.
So I've had pretty positive experiences in that sense, which is really nice.
That is so great. I love that. Tell me about, when you have a family of your own, what are some of the values that you picked up and imbibed in your family that you're like, this is something that is so important to me, I'm passing this on?
I think obviously like the strong family values and how your family is everything is definitely something that I want to pass on. And also just to dream big and work hard, and nothing is out of your reach if you really want it. I think that that's something that my mom really taught me, and I would hope that I'd be able to ingrain that into my own children as well, that whatever they dream, whatever they want, they can do. And I just think that's really powerful because I don't feel like everybody's raised that way. And I'm very lucky to have been raised that way.
And, your mom has been an activist for so many women. What has that been like for you, and how are you involved in her efforts?
I think, well, the going to Ukraine obviously scared me and my siblings, just because it's so scary. So very admirable that she went. As her children, we fear for her safety. But then, it makes you feel like all the people who are there, like what they're experiencing. It's amazing because I'm able to be really educated on what's going on, because I get to have lunch with my mom, with all the people she's meeting with, or she's just able to share insights that I don't think I would be able to get just from being around. But I get that firsthand information from her and education, which I'm really thankful for.
And what's the dynamic like with Shlomo and Aaron and Miriam? I mean, it seems like it's a party at your house all the time. Like, I feel like anyone would be like, this family is so fun. We just want to hang out always.
Yeah, we all get along really well. Like my siblings, I mean, Aaron's so much younger than me at this point. I think once he hits his 20s, we'll be able to rekindle again. But 16 to 30 is kind of a hard age gap. We just went mini golfing the other day. That was fun, those kinds of things. But Miriam and Shlomo, I talk to or see daily. Now I'm actually living by my mom until I decide my next step. So me and Miriam are in the house, and Shlomo works with my mom. So I'm literally hanging out with my siblings every day. They're my best friends. I remember we were on a family vacation last year, and this somebody came over to our table and they're like, I watched your show and I just saw that you guys got along, but you guys actually like each other and really hang out. We're like, yeah.
It's really not that common,
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes people, it's siblings have their issues, and you guys just are really tight. Yeah. I think that if you come from that, you're definitely going to create that too.
Yeah.
And is there anything else you'd like to share to my audience?
Yeah, no, I'm so thankful for my upbringing. And I think to like be able to instill in your children that they are everything and they can do everything, that like really sinks into you. Because if you're raised with that mentality, then I think that really translates into the rest of your life. Because if you are brought up where, like, I have some friends who are brought up where like their parents are like, oh, well, you're not good at this, so don't go in that direction. And I feel like, even though maybe that's true, but just to uplift people, your children in the way of like, you're amazing at this, like, wow, you're incredible, you can do anything, really will like go down to their core and will, as they get older and grow up, like that's something that they'll carry with them.
Yes. That's excellent. Thank you so much. It was so wonderful having you on the show.
Thank you so much. It was so great to meet you.
Now I have Miriam with me. Miriam, welcome to That's Total Mom Sense.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. I want my audience to get to know a little bit about how you were as a child. You were very headstrong and curious, and just as much as athletic, you were into tech and building. And so tell us about who you've always been that we might not already know.
Definitely have always been very energetic, very positive, and very curious. I just remember finding the very few kids in my class who were down to just do whatever with me. And I would come up with games where like our feet are alligators and, you have to try to step on each other's toes. And it was like a game that we played every recess. We looked crazy. And I would just find like one or two girls who were just down to be weird and silly with me. And that was just my personality growing up. I just like to move my body. I would, bring a football to school, even though you're not allowed to play sports. And I would wear sneakers and run in the mud. And then my teacher would call my mom and say that Miriam's too dirty because I would get mud all over my shirt and eat messily. I didn't know how to not be myself. That was really it. I didn't feel like I had a choice, There was the majority of my class, I remember, who all they did was talk about like what shoe brand they were wearing, and they would gossip about each other. And I just never knew how to do that. I never wanted to do that. So even if I tried to fit in with them, my brain just didn't compute like their brains did, in the sense that I couldn't converse with them in the way that they wanted me to. And so I just was like, okay, well, if I can't fit in with these kids, what do I want to do? How do I want to spend my time? And that's why I kind of always have just been naturally able to just do whatever it was that I wanted to do and just be myself.
Yes. Having spoken to your mom at length, like you really were the catalyst for like, I think we need a change. We don't have to be forced to live this way. There is a certain freedom that's granted to us as people in society, and we can go another way, And so, how has that been? Because you were Arlen's the youngest, but like young at that time, and that's when she made the decision that like, for Miriam's sake, if nothing else,
right,
we got to change this.
No, I remember like being very confused. It was very hard that like all of a sudden, my mom was like changing the course of my entire family's life by doing everything that she did. And I remember like people in my community, because I would still go to school in my community. I still was completely religious when like we left and she left. I remember other mothers coming to me and being like, Miriam, like, I'm so sorry about your mom. I'm here for you. And I remember like kind of getting annoyed because like the way they would talk about her was just in a way that she's a bad mother, like she's not doing a good job. Yeah. And there was not one moment throughout my entire like childhood experience where I felt upset at her for what she did. There's tons of moments where it was hard for me. There's tons of moments where I was disappointed that she like couldn't show up to something, where I was sad. But there's never a moment where I was like, I'm upset at my mom for doing this, because there was just something inside of me that said, this is what needs to be happening. This is what needs to be done. She needs to do this. She needs to do her thing. And I didn't know why. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew that it had to be happening. And that really grounded me as a child. Yeah.
Wow. So how did you did you have to inspire your siblings like to be like, we have to kind of make a shift and break out of the community for a whole new paradigm for ourselves?
Honestly, it didn't go like that at all, because the thing about religion is that there's no way to convince anybody to do anything.
Yeah.
Religion is something that's so integral and so much of a core identity to who somebody is that it can't be swayed from outside sources. It's very much yourself who has to decide, I want to change my life. I want to not believe in this anymore. Nobody can convince you to be more or less religious. Something that you have to figure out. Yeah. And so we didn't really have those conversations, because if we did, that would push us away from each other. All we can really do is just hold each other's hand despite our differences, and then also hold each other's hands when we decide to be more or less religious. Like I remember the first time I saw my sister wear pants, like right around when season 1 was being filmed, like 2020, and we went out to a restaurant, and she never spoke to me about it. I just remember going to meet her at this restaurant, and she was in jeans. It was the first time in my life I ever saw her in jeans. I was so excited, so happy. I kept my cool. I didn't say anything. I didn't even bring it up. My insides are freaking out, But if I was like too excited, that's me putting my opinions on her. And I didn't want to do that, And the fact that she didn't tell me about it and call me like, Miriam, I'm thinking about wearing pants. Like, I didn't get any of this, I just had to keep my cool. And then I remember going home and be like, oh my God.
Oh, yeah. Oh my goodness. That's great. That's so great. Okay. Before Stanford, which is phenomenal. You're just, I think your mom said the president mentioned that you will take on his role someday. So
once I turned 16 and I was still like kind of living in the community, I was going to a unorthodox school at the time. I decided that I didn't want to be religious anymore. Like that was when I had my fuck it moment. I ate a bite of a cheeseburger, and that was like the just antithesis to everything that I used to believe in. And so I was like breaking that boundary. And then once I decided to say fuck it to my religion and my beliefs, I said, okay, so what do I want? Like I've always believed in this, but what do I want to do? And that's when I realized that I built an app when I was 13, and that was something that made me so happy. And so I wanted to continue.
God, what was it?
It was called A Terrace. So I went to a high school called A Terrace. And so it was an app for my school. Like I had the food menu and how to get directions to the school and how to like call the office. And it was a utility app for students and teachers at A Terrace High School.
Then how did you, hack into a course that you wanted to take that was like a college course?
Yeah. So how I built the app was through watching YouTube videos. Like you can really learn anything. Even today, I'm like very much an autodidact. I love to just learn things on my own. And so I started Googling courses on ethical hacking. So that's kind of like the terminology in terms of learning how to hack things, applying what I learned to, a website and being able to get into it and things like that. And then putting my name on a course that I wanted to take because they said that I can't take it. And also it was more just me, like, I think it was one of the final, I was taking this course on Udemy. I'm not sure if you've heard of Udemy. Udemy is a great website, udemy.com. It's free course, not free. It's like $9 per course, but super cheap courses where you can learn ethical hacking. You can learn app development, literally anything. And so I was taking a course on ethical hacking. And so it was like the final project was like to do something that I actually did when I was like hacking that website. So it was for me just like, oh, I need to do this anyways. Let me just show that I can do that. So like they know I'm serious about engineering and coding and things like that.
And then the professor was like dumbfounded and was like, absolutely, you can have a seat in my class.
Totally.
You pulled up a chair to the table yourself, literally. Tell us about your, other ventures after that.
When I was like at 16, I was still in the community. And when I wasn't religious anymore, I didn't want to be there anymore. So it was hard for me to justify the things that we were learning because now I don't even believe in the religion, for like everything that's sexist. And I was like, okay, fine, but like it's sexist and uncomfortable, but at least like I believe in this stuff. So I have to like go with the flow. But now it's like, I don't even believe in this. I can't, it's painful to listen to these teachers talk about like the way in which men and women are different. Like it physically hurts now. So I remember talking to my mom about it and saying like, I can't be here anymore. I can't do this. And she's like, Miriam, you have one more year, then you can go to any college. Like just stick it out. You're so close. Just finish off. You have one more year, then you graduate. But I ended up going to the summer program in San Francisco, going into 12th grade. And that was my first time leaving Muncie, like going to on my own to be somewhere. And I lived amongst people that were all engineers. I did this programming summer camp and I loved it so much that I decided I'm not leaving. Like the last month of the summer, I was like, okay, I have to devise some sort of plan where I'm staying in San Francisco. I cannot go back. And that's exactly what I did. I got into their college program for like the camp that I did. They had a college program technically for people who graduated high school, I didn't even graduate yet, but they let me join the program because they knew like I won awards during the summer camp. I built 2 apps and then I stayed there and I finished high school early. And then I worked as an engineer for a year and then I went to Stanford. And so started a couple companies in between. That's
Oh
pretty
my
much it.
gosh. Can you give us a little more high level of what you studied at the university and how you led your own course? You were the
Yeah.
youngest student to do that.
Yeah. So I was 16 when I joined. My roommate was 22. Most of the people there were ages like 20 to 40. That was like the age group. I was 16. But I fit right in. Like I remember thinking in my head, like, finally, these are like my people. They're all so curious about the world. They're also positive minded. Like I always remember like saying at that time, I left a world of no and can't and entered a world of yes and can. And I was never surrounded by people that said you can do it outside of like my parents and my family. The community itself is very much like, no, you can't do this. You can't do that. You can't do this. That's not appropriate. That's wrong. That might turn a man on. That might do that. One, it was really great because I learned how to actually code. So for me, when I was still in the community, all like the way I coded was by watching YouTube videos and just like doing like process of elimination, brute force. Like I didn't understand how to code. I kind of just like knew the formula, like I knew exactly what I had to do, but I didn't understand it. And then going to San Francisco, I actually like understood it conceptually because I started taking like really more rigorous classes in it. I got into data science. I worked at UCSF as a data science intern on their like neuroscience department. Oh, it wasn't just great in terms of me growing like my engineering capabilities, but also it was the first time I wore pants on a Saturday, first time I ate pepperoni pizza, like just all my first, like the first time being friends with a Christian, like majority of the world is Christian. And yet I was never friends with somebody who wasn't ultra Orthodox Jewish. It was my first time being friends with a Jewish person who wasn't Orthodox, like,
right.
Yeah. And so I just became friends with people from all walks of life.
I feel like if you were to go back to your past, I guess you wouldn't want to change a thing because once you have this whole new world of opportunity, you embrace all the little things. And it's like, I think that's what life is about. And we forget that. And those, of us that we shouldn't take it for granted. And so,
totally.
I think that you're not taking a second for granted because of what you had before.
Totally. No, every single day I put on a pair of pants. Every single day I feel a sense of empowerment, and a sense of freedom. And it's like, that feeling has not dissipated. Everything that I put on my body that feels comfortable and like is like, I identify with, it's empowering because I was never able to do that. I was never able to just wear a plain white t-shirt and a pair of baggy pants. Like now I can, and now I do it all the time and it feels so good.
And what lessons do you teach your mom? Because she's learned so much from you.
Like some things that I legitimately teach her is when she's trying to become more tech savvy, and like she's very tech savvy in terms of like emerging technologies, but just like using the iPad, if she's trying to design something, I would learn Procreate, and she's like, Miriam, I want to learn how to use Procreate. And then I would spend like a week just learning Procreate, just like gaining all the knowledge to do that. And then the next week I would just be like, okay, this is how everything's done. And then she takes little videos of me like telling her, like, this is how you do that. And that's how you do that. And she's like, I want to learn how to like create a pattern and put it on a dress. And then I'd be like, okay, so if you have your figures here and now you can create your pattern like this, and then you can put it on like that. So those are like kind of some things that I teach her. I am a huge family person and I'm so grateful to be doing business with my family. And then because we are very opinionated, we have to figure out ways to make it work because it's your family and your business. And usually that is separated. We all have our own methods of like going about that. Like my brother and my mom, they're usually like working side by side each other throughout the day. For me, I personally like getting out of the apartment and like doing my own thing during the day and then being home with them in the evening, and like in the morning. We all do what we need to do to like make sure that we're good in terms of like how we communicate and how we deal with things. But I would say that we've been good at doing that. And so it's been working out so far, which is great.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Your mom is an activist. I'm going to Ukraine and the time that she was there, like how were all of you feeling for her out here? Oh my God.
Yeah. No, it was honestly terrible. Like she's my mom and I was with my friend in India at the time, but every single day I would text my mom and she couldn't really talk, like she was busy. but I would just text her and like send her a message, "You alive?" ?
Yeah.
And every single day she would find the time to respond yes. And like, that's all I would get, because it was like, she's just always doing something. But I remember one day I texted her, "You alive?" And then she didn't text me back that day. And I was like freaking out. I'm like, she's supposed to text me back. This was my one request from her going to Ukraine, is that she texts me every single day, "I'm alive." And I just know that she's alive.
Yeah.
And so I was like, what the, like what's happening?
Totally.
Just like bombarding her with text messages, calling her. And then like finally she responds like, "I'm so sorry, blah, 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 blah." Even when she was in transition and she was like in Czechoslovakia or like, like getting the flight, I was still like, she's not safe until she's home, when she's not home yet. So it was very hard.
Right.
It was very hard. But at the end of the day, like I do respect her and I do respect her decision and I am proud of her. And it is she is a big inspiration for me to just follow through with your beliefs and like be willing to literally put your life on the line for what your values are. So it is very inspirational.
Do you see yourself as a parent someday?
When I left the community, I decided that I didn't want kids because it's just been forced down my throat. When I was there to have, like, that was my purpose, was to have a family.
Yeah.
And then that was when I was 16. And then when I was 20, I had a dream that I went to the bathroom, I took a pregnancy test and it came back positive. Oh, interesting. And then I was like, okay. Like I said, okay, like in my head. And that kind of meant like, I'm having a baby. And in my dream, I was 20 years old,
Right.
And and I believe in abortion. And I think that every person has the right to do that. And there wasn't in my mind at that time, like that was something that I wanted to do in that dream. And so it's kind of just like having a kid. And I remember walking down the stairs in the house that I was in and going to my mom, or I think it was my mom, and saying like, "I'm having a baby." It wasn't like I'm pregnant. It was like, I'm having a baby,
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And then I woke up like right after that. And I guess that just changed something inside of me where like, since I internalized having a kid, for some reason, it was like, oh, maybe I want a kid. I would say that I don't know if I want to be pregnant, but because I'm queer, I was thinking maybe I could marry a woman who would like to birth the babies. And then that's an option. So that's another thing. I don't know. So the answer is, I don't know.
And is there anything else you want to share, with the audience? They're predominantly parents. And I think it's important to have this exchange, of stories, of experiences, of life lessons.
I actually have a big part of my audience is moms for some reason. And so I would say like my Instagram and also my podcast, Faking It, which is about female empowerment. And I talk about all sorts of things for women my age, like in their 20s and then also in their 30s and also in their teens. And I think it's just a good perspective for moms to have, to see like what are like the kids talking about and thinking about, and what are their approaches when it comes to sex and like their body. And I kind of go into all those like really uncomfortable spaces and have really hard conversations. So checking out the podcast, following me on Instagram would definitely, I think, be helpful. Yeah.
Yes. I watched you singing and playing the guitar at the Paint to Power event. When I talked to your mom too, it's like the fact that her dad, had taken the guitar and his $3 with him,
right.
when they had, so it's just, there's something generational when it comes to the music that stayed alive in you. So if you wouldn't mind like singing a few lines of that Dixie Chick song you sang.
I'm happy to do it. I don't think I have a very good voice, but if you'd like me to, I'm
yes. Yay.
Well, I've been afraid of changing, 'cause I built my life around you. But time makes you bolder, and children get older, and I'm getting older too. Oh, I'm getting older too.
Ooh, that was nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Miriam. You are a gift.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for your platform.
Thanks for listening to this episode of That's Total Mom Sense. You can listen to the audio version wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for That's Total Mom Sense. You can learn more about my guests by logging on to www.thatstotalmomsense.com. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, where I'm most active on social media. My handle is at Kanika Chadda-Gupta. And if you have ideas for show topics or guests you can't wait to have on the show, write to me at that'stotalmomsense@gmail.com. And lastly, please rate, review, and subscribe to That's Total Mom Sense if you haven't already. Thanks for being in my tribe.